In a small, peaceful village, something utterly shocking occurred. A young, radiant Muslim girl married a majestic white horse. The entire village was thrown into chaos as whispers and debates filled the air. Some called it a disgrace, while others believed there must be a deeper meaning behind such an extraordinary act. The girl, calm and resolute, defended her decision with an unwavering conviction. She claimed this marriage was not what it seemed, but held a greater purpose, one that no one in the village could understand. Behind her serene expression, there was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. The villagers were divided. Some were horrified, branding the act as unnatural, while others were consumed with curiosity. Why would such a graceful and intelligent girl make such a choice? Even her wealthy and influential family appeared to carry a heavy secret, their silence adding to the intrigue. The story didn't stop at the village. As the news spread, it went viral across the internet, drawing attention from far and wide. People everywhere asked the same questions. What could possibly have led this girl to marry a horse? And what incredible events unfolded after the union? This isn't just a story of mystery, it's one of faith, sacrifice, and love beyond boundaries. As we take you deeper into this tale, you'll be left astonished and moved by the events that follow. Stay with us as we reveal the truth behind this unusual and captivating marriage and uncover the lesson it holds for us all. In the same village where the unusual marriage took place, there once lived a wealthy and influential couple. They were known for their immense riches, vast lands, a grand palace, luxurious cars, and a household filled with servants catering to their every need. Yet despite their wealth and comfort, their hearts were heavy with sorrow. The couple had everything they could wish for, except for one thing: a child. For years they had yearned for the blessing of a child to complete their family, but their prayers remained unanswered. Their lavish lifestyle felt meaningless without the joy and laughter of a little one running through their home. Desperation pushed them to great lengths. They visited countless doctors, hakims, and specialists, seeking a cure for their childlessness. They spared no expense, but all efforts proved futile. In their longing for a child, they turned to acts of charity, feeding the poor for 7 days straight and arranging weddings for orphan girls. Yet despite their generosity and good deeds, their prayers for a child went unanswered. One fateful day, a servant approached the wealthy woman and said, "Madam, there's a holy man, a fakir, at the door. He refuses to accept anything from a servant and insists on seeing the mistress of the house." Curious and desperate, the woman went to meet the fakir. Holding flour and some money in her hands, she approached him with humility. Sensing her distress, the fakir asked, "Daughter, what troubles you? Your sorrow seems overwhelming." With tears in her eyes, she poured out her grief. "We have everything: wealth, luxury, and comfort, but we have no children. Without a child, this wealth feels empty. My heart aches for the blessing of a child, even if it's only for a short time." The fakir paused in deep thought before responding, "Daughter, Allah may grant you a child, but the child's life will be limited to only 14 years. Though shocked, the woman replied, "If that is Allah's will, I accept it. Even a few years with a child would bring more joy than a lifetime without one." The fakir then handed her some wheat, instructing her to grind it into flour and make a loaf of bread to share with her husband. "Do this," and he said, "and Allah will bless you with a child." With renewed hope, the woman returned home, ready to follow the fakir's guidance, unaware of the trials and miracles that awaited her family. The wealthy woman followed the fakir's instructions with unwavering faith. She ground the wheat into fine flour and baked a single loaf of bread. That night, she and her husband ate the bread together, silently praying for the miracle they had long awaited. A month later, a sign of hope appeared. She realized she was pregnant. Overjoyed, she rushed to her husband with the news, and they both wept tears of happiness. For the first time in years, their home felt alive with anticipation and excitement. The fakir's words were true, and their faith had been rewarded. 9 months passed, and the couple was blessed with a beautiful baby boy. They named him Shahzad, meaning prince, as he was the light of their lives and the answer to their prayers. Their joy knew no bounds. They celebrated his birth by distributing food to the poor for 11 days, thanking Allah for this precious blessing. Yet even in their happiness, the shadow of the fakir's prophecy loomed over their hearts. They knew Shahzad's life would be short, limited to just 14 years. This thought filled them with both gratitude and fear. They resolved to cherish every moment with him and fulfill his every wish. From the very beginning, Shahzad was raised with immense love and care. His parents spared no expense in ensuring his comfort and happiness. He was a bright and curious child who brought joy to everyone around him. His laughter echoed through the grand halls of their home, filling it with warmth that had been missing for so long. However, out of fear for his safety, his parents kept him sheltered from the outside world. Shahzad was taught the Quran and received his education within the confines of their home. He never stepped foot outside, and his every need was met within the boundaries of their estate. His parents hoped that by protecting him from the dangers of the world, they might prolong his precious life. As the years passed, Shahzad grew into a kind-hearted and intelligent boy. By the age of 8, he was affectionately called Shahzada, a name that reflected his princely demeanor and beloved status in the household. Despite their efforts to shield him, Shahzad began to notice the unspoken tension in his parents' eyes. He often wondered why they were so overly protective, but he never questioned their love. When Shahzad turned 12, he began to feel the constraints of his sheltered life. One day he approached his father with a heartfelt plea. "Abba, I want to go outside. I've always stayed indoors, but I want to see the fields and the world beyond these walls." His father, though hesitant, couldn't deny his son's request. With a heavy heart, he thought, "My son has only 2 years left to live. Let him enjoy the time he has." Forcing a smile, he replied, "All right, my son. You may go wherever you like." As Shahzad experienced the world outside for the first time, his parents watched him with a mix of joy and sorrow. They knew that every moment with him was a blessing, but the countdown to his 14th year was always at the back of their minds. As Shahzad ventured into the world outside his home, he was captivated by the beauty and vibrance of life. The lush green fields, the chirping of birds, and the warmth of the sunlight filled him with a joy he had never known. For the first time, he felt free. His parents, though anxious, couldn't help but smile as they saw the happiness on their son's face. However, the shadow of the fakir's prophecy weighed heavily on their minds. Shahzad was now 12, and they knew his time was limited. Despite their best efforts to shield him from harm, they realized they couldn't stop time or fate. One evening, while sitting together, they decided on a plan. The father turned to his wife and said, "Let's arrange Shahzad's marriage. He has only 2 years left, and we must ensure his remaining time is filled with happiness. Perhaps his wife's prayers could even alter his destiny." The mother agreed, but before moving forward, they decided to consult the fakir who had blessed them years ago. Servants were sent out to search for the fakir. After days of searching, they found him living in a humble hut on the outskirts of a neighboring village. With great respect, the wealthy man and his wife approached the fakir and shared their intention. The fakir listened carefully and said, "Marry your son to a pious girl who has memorized the Quran. A righteous wife can pray for her husband, and her prayers have the power to change even the most difficult fate. Dua has immense power in altering one's destiny." Taking the fakir's advice to heart, the couple began their search for a suitable bride. Eventually, they found a young girl from a poor but devout family. She was a Hafizah of the Quran and known for her virtuous character. Despite her family's financial struggles, her righteousness shone brightly, and the wealthy couple saw her as the perfect match for Shahzad. The wedding was arranged quickly, and Shahzad's marriage to the pious girl was celebrated with joy and grandeur. The couple's hope grew as they believed this union might bring blessings to their son's life. However, the parents had one condition for the marriage. The father pulled Shahzad aside and said, "My son, no matter what happens, never reveal the truth about your fate to your wife. She must never know that your life is limited to 14 years. Shahzad, though confused, promised to honor his father's request. Life seemed blissful for the newlyweds. Shahzad spent his days with his wife, showering her with love and care. But every night when the world fell silent, Shahzad would leave the house quietly and return before dawn. His wife, though happy, began to notice his strange behavior. One night, as she woke to find the bed empty, her heart filled with worry. Where did her husband go every night? Why didn't he tell her the truth? She decided to stay silent, fearing she might upset him by asking too many questions. As the nights passed, her curiosity grew into anxiety. She started observing his every move, but couldn't muster the courage to confront him. Each morning, Shahzad would return as if nothing had happened, and she would pretend not to notice. Her unease didn't go unnoticed by an old flower seller who often visited their home. One day, the old woman asked, "Child, why do you look so troubled?" Tears welled up in the wife's eyes as she replied, "My husband leaves every night and returns before dawn. I have no idea where he goes or why." The old woman offered advice, saying, "Stay awake tonight and watch where he goes. If you feel yourself falling asleep, prick your finger and sprinkle salt on the wound. The pain will keep you awake." Determined to uncover the truth, Shahzad's wife decided to follow the old woman's advice, not knowing the life-changing secret she was about to discover. That night, Shahzad's wife prepared herself to stay awake. As the hours stretched on, she fought off sleep by pricking her finger and sprinkling salt on the wound, just as the old woman had advised. The pain kept her alert, but as the night deepened, exhaustion crept in. She struggled to keep her eyes open, determined to discover her husband's secret. Finally, as the clock struck midnight, she noticed Shahzad stirring beside her. Quietly, he got out of bed and tiptoed toward the door. Her heart raced as she watched him slip out of the house, vanishing into the darkness. Without hesitation, she followed him, keeping a safe distance so as not to be noticed. Shahzad walked through the empty streets with a sense of purpose, his steps steady and confident. His wife trailed behind, her mind racing with questions. Where was he going? Who was he meeting? As they approached the edge of the village, Shahzad entered a secluded field surrounded by tall trees. There, under the moonlight, something extraordinary happened. Shahzad stopped in the middle of the field, holding a small handful of wheat in his hands. To her astonishment, he tossed the wheat into the air, and in an instant, his form began to change. His arms stretched, his legs transformed, and his body grew larger and more majestic. Before her eyes, Shahzad turned into a magnificent white horse with a flowing mane and a powerful presence. The sight left her breathless. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her husband, the man she loved, was under some kind of curse. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the magnitude of the secret he had been keeping from her. The white horse began to gallop across the field, as if seeking solace in the night. Shahzad's wife stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Should she confront him? Should she return home? Her mind swirled with emotions, shock, fear, and an overwhelming sense of sorrow. When dawn approached, the horse returned to the field, and as the first rays of sunlight broke through the sky, Shahzad transformed back into his human form. Exhausted and unaware of his wife's discovery, he quietly returned home and slipped back into bed as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Shahzad's wife sat in silence, her mind consumed by what she had witnessed. She decided to confront him that evening, unable to carry the weight of her discovery any longer. As night fell, she sat by his side and waited for the moment when he would try to leave again. When he began to stir, she gently placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Where are you going, Shahzad? I know your secret. I saw what happened last night." Shahzad froze, his heart sinking. He turned to face her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I didn't want you to find out," he said softly. "I didn't want to burden you with the truth." "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Why have you been carrying this alone?" With a heavy sigh, Shahzad began to explain. "I am under a curse," he said. "Every night I transform into a horse, and there is nothing I can do to stop it. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you would leave me." His wife shook her head, her voice firm yet compassionate. "I would never leave you, Shahzad. You are my husband, and I vowed to stand by your side, no matter what." Her unwavering support gave Shahzad a glimmer of hope. "There is a way to break the curse," he said hesitantly, "but it's dangerous, and I couldn't bear to ask you to take such a risk." "Tell me what I need to do," she replied without hesitation. "I will do whatever it takes to free you from this curse." Shahzad explained the ritual. She would need to gather 2 handfuls of wheat, one in each hand. "Throw the wheat from your right hand at me first," he instructed. "Then throw the wheat from your left hand. But you must not hesitate, or the curse will become permanent." Determined to help her husband, Shahzad's wife prepared for the task. That night, she followed him to the field once more, clutching the wheat tightly in her hands. As he transformed into the white horse, she tossed the wheat from her right hand, and the air seemed to shimmer with magic. But just as she raised her left hand, fear gripped her heart, and she hesitated for a split second. In that brief moment of hesitation, the horse reared up and bolted into the distance, disappearing into the darkness. Shahzad's wife fell to her knees, overcome with grief. "I failed you," she whispered through her tears. Her heart shattered. She returned home, determined to find another way to save her husband, no matter how long it took or how far she had to go. The days following Shahzad's disappearance were filled with anguish and determination for his wife. She couldn't rest, eat, or sleep without the thought of her husband haunting her mind. Shahzad's parents, too, were consumed by grief, their health deteriorating with each passing day. One evening, as the family sat in somber silence, Shahzad's wife broke the stillness. "Please grant me permission to leave and search for my husband," she said firmly. "I cannot sit here and do nothing while he is out there, suffering under this curse." Her words brought a faint spark of hope to her in-laws. Despite their worries for her safety, they agreed and sent several servants to accompany her. With determination burning in her heart, she donned a hijab and began her journey to find Shahzad, vowing not to return until she had succeeded. Her first stop was a bustling town on the outskirts of the village. To gather information, she established a public kitchen, offering free food to anyone who shared a new or unusual story. Each day, people came with tales of strange events, mysterious happenings, and whispered rumors, but none of them led her to Shahzad. Days turned into weeks, and her hope began to waver. Then one evening, an elderly woman arrived at the kitchen. After finishing her meal, she hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Child," the old woman said, "last night I saw something unusual that may be of interest to you." Intrigued, Shahzad's wife leaned in closer as the old woman recounted her story. She explained how she had been picking flowers in the fields when darkness fell, leaving her lost and disoriented. Hearing the sound of a bell, she followed a cow across the fields to a hidden cave. Inside the cave, she saw a magnificent white horse that transformed into a young man. The man milked the cow, prepared his meal, and spoke to a crow that flew in shortly after. The man asked the crow about his family, the old woman continued. The crow told him his parents were bedridden with grief and that his wife had opened a public kitchen in search of him. The man seemed deeply troubled, and after eating, he transformed back into a horse and left the cave at dawn. Hearing this, Shahzad's wife felt her heart race. She knew without a doubt that the white horse was her husband. She thanked the old woman profusely and begged her to take her to the cave. Though hesitant at first, the old woman finally agreed, warning her that the journey would be dangerous. That night they set out for the cave. The path was treacherous, with thorny bushes and uneven ground. But Shahzad's wife pushed forward, driven by her love and determination. When they arrived at the cave, they hid behind a cluster of rocks, waiting for the events the old woman had described. As the moon rose high in the sky, a cow entered the cave, followed shortly by a majestic white horse. The horse transformed into Shahzad, and just as the old woman had said, he milked the cow, prepared his meal, and waited for the crow. When the crow arrived, it delivered the same heartbreaking news. His parents were unwell, and his wife was tirelessly searching for him. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Shahzad's wife stepped out of hiding and called his name. Nurtal at Priomail. In Shahzad turned in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice trembling. Tears streamed down her face as she replied, "Because I love you, Shahzad. I couldn't bear to be apart from you, and I'll do whatever it takes to free you from this curse." Shahzad, overcome with emotion, embraced her and said, "If you truly wish to save me, there is a task you must complete. It will be dangerous, but it is the only way to break the curse." "I'll do whatever it takes," she said without hesitation. Shahzad explained the task. "You must cross 7 dense forests filled with terrifying creatures. In the 7th forest, you will find an old hut where a wise man lives. He owns a black horse. You must collect some hair from that horse and return it to me. But you must do this before the noon prayer, or the curse will never be lifted." The next morning, Shahzad's wife bid farewell to the old woman and began her journey alone. The first forest was dark and filled with strange, eerie sounds. Ferocious animals watched her from the shadows, but she recited verses from the Quran, and they didn't harm her. In the second forest, the challenges grew worse. The creatures were larger and more menacing, their growls echoing through the trees, but her unwavering faith and determination kept her moving forward. One by one, she crossed each forest, enduring countless obstacles and dangers. Her clothes were torn, and her feet were bloodied from the thorny paths, but she didn't stop. Finally, she reached the seventh forest and found the old hut. Inside, a pious old man sat deep in prayer. He listened to her story and said, "Your husband's curse is the result of black magic. To break it, you must gather the black horse's hair, and I will recite prayers over it." The old man handed her a tool to safely pluck the horse's hair, and she completed the task. With the hair in hand, the old man prayed over it and sent her on her way. Exhausted but determined, she made her way back to the cave, ready to free her husband from his curse. Shahzad's wife emerged from the seventh forest battered and bruised, but determined to save her husband. The journey back to the cave was long and treacherous, but the thought of finally breaking the curse gave her the strength to push forward. With the black horse's hair tightly clutched in her hands, she prayed for guidance, knowing that every step brought her closer to reuniting with Shahzad. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, she reached the cave. Shahzad was there in his horse form, his white mane glistening in the soft light. He stood still, as though sensing her presence. Taking a deep breath, she approached him and gently placed the black horse's hair on his mane, just as the old man had instructed. In an instant, the air around them shimmered with a golden light. A powerful wind swept through the cave, and Shahzad began to transform. His majestic horse form faded, and he slowly returned to his human self. When the light finally dimmed, Shahzad stood before her, whole and free. Overwhelmed with emotion, Shahzad embraced his wife, tears streaming down his face. "You've saved me," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't think it was possible, but your love and determination have broken the curse." Shahzad's wife wept with joy, her relief washing over her like a wave. "I would have crossed 1,000 forests for you," she said softly. "We are meant to be together, no matter the obstacles." The couple's reunion was nothing short of miraculous. Hand in hand, they made their way back to their village, where Shahzad's parents were still confined to their beds, weakened by grief. As Shahzad stepped through the door, his mother and father looked up in disbelief. "Shahzad!" his mother cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "Is it really you?" Shahzad rushed to their side, kneeling beside them. "Yes, Ami, it's me. I'm back and I'm free." His father, unable to hold back his tears, embraced him tightly. "We thought we had lost you forever," he said, "but Allah has brought you back to us." Over the following weeks, the family began to heal, their joy restoring the health and vitality they had lost. Shahzad's wife became a beloved member of the household, her courage and faith earning the admiration of everyone in the village. Word of Shahzad's miraculous return spread quickly, and the villagers were eager to hear the story. At first, they were shocked to learn of the curse and the trials Shahzad's wife had faced. But as they listened, their shock turned to awe and respect. "This story is a testament to the power of faith and love," said one elder. "Shahzad's wife has shown us all what it means to be truly devoted." The family's life returned to a peaceful rhythm, but Shahzad and his wife never forgot the lessons they had learned. They spent their days helping those in need, using their story as a source of inspiration for others. One day, as they sat together in the garden, Shahzad turned to his wife and said, "You saved my life, but you also taught me the true meaning of love and sacrifice. I will spend the rest of my life honoring the gift you've given me." His wife smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "And I will always be by your side, no matter what challenges we face. Together, we are stronger than anything." The villagers often spoke of Shahzad and his wife as a symbol of hope and resilience. Their story was passed down from generation to generation, a reminder that even the darkest curses can be broken by the light of faith and love. Years later, as Shahzad and his wife watched their children play in the same fields where his curse had once confined him, they knew their journey had come full circle. The trials they had endured had only strengthened their bond, and the life they had built together was a testament to the power of unwavering devotion. Their story, though filled with pain and struggle, had transformed into one of joy and redemption, a legacy that would inspire countless others for years to come.